Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
It goes in, there's animations. So
Okay, okay. Great, okay. So over the course of the presentation, briefly, I'm going to summarize a collaborative system modeling project that we undertook over the course of 2024, the goal of which was to better understand how the homeless service system is functioning with the aim of more efficiently and more equitably serving the population in need. We looked at entry points, types of interventions, things like shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, as well as, and most importantly, how people exit the homeless service system. The findings of that system modeling process reveal some gaps in the system and some opportunities for strategic investment to optimize the system for better outcomes, particularly in terms of exits to permanent housing. So I will say the system modeling process was driven by a pretty broad-based work group with a core planning group based within the Cobb Homeless Alliance and other key partners, and then a broader-based working group including service providers, housing partners, data experts, and system navigators. The input of all of these different stakeholder groups was vital to ensure that we were actually modeling in a way that reflected the lived experiences and operational realities of the system, not just data points. So speaking of data points, however, this slide shows, in a moment as we click through, we'll show the current reality for each program type and the results in terms of how people move to permanent destinations or not, as the case may be. So one important thing to note at the beginning here is that 87% number that you see next to the orange arrow there represents that 87% of the total volume moving through the system moves directly into emergency shelter. 1,537 households, and then the vast majority of those folks exit the system, so they don't move into transitional housing, into permanent supportive housing, into rapid rehousing, or any other service. Want to underscore here, emergency shelter is a critical service. It's absolutely essential to a functioning homeless service system. So this is not a dig on emergency shelter, but it should be noted that the vast majority of the volume only moves through emergency shelter. And you can see that 13% of those folks who are moving through emergency shelter end up moving to permanent destinations. If we compare that to rapid rehousing and also to permanent supportive housing, we have much higher percentages on this slide of exits to permanent destinations. Okay. Similarly with transitional housing, much higher percentage. Okay. Let's see. This is a new slide, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, okay. So broadly speaking, our goal is to increase exits to permanent destinations. This is what we're modeling for. We're trying to think about what kind of strategic investments are needed in order to increase exits to permanent destinations. Based on the qualitative and quantitative data that we collected, the quantitative model that we built based on a variety of different data sources, it would appear that the best bang for our buck would be to invest in rapid rehousing programs and permanent supportive housing programs, because these map onto much better percentages of exits to permanent destinations. Let's take a look at some specific services and some specific investments that we're modeling for. These two bar charts represent year-over-year investment increases that are just simulated, just modeled for over the course of the next few years from 2025 through 2029, with the bar chart on the left representing permanent supportive housing and the one on the right representing rapid rehousing. So these are the investments that are modeled for. So over the years, we have seen some fluctuations, but broadly, not enough growth in family-specific housing units to meet demand. There are a lot of families in Cobb County that are still in extended stay motels, couch surfing, or cycling through shelters with no clear exit path. And we were able to see in our modeling process that what we need is a stronger pipeline of affordable, stable units paired with supportive services to ensure families don't fall through the cracks. We see something similar with regard to adult-only households. The inventory simply hasn't kept pace with the need, especially for single adults who don't qualify for family-focused programs. These households are often the ones that law enforcement encounters and the ones most likely to remain unsheltered. We need better options in Cobb County for targeted rapid rehousing to improve outcomes for this group. This slide breaks down the projected annual costs of each intervention type and their associated success in getting people to permanent supportive housing. Broadly speaking, permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing are just more cost-effective in the long run than shelters, which have low exit success rates. Again, I want to underscore one more time, we want to say that shelter plays a key role in providing emergency response for those experiencing homelessness, but it's also clear that strategic investment in permanent solutions saves money over time, and more importantly, it changes people's lives for the better. That's my time. Anybody have any questions for me?
First, let me check and see if commissioners have questions. Commissioner Burrow?
Can you expand on rapid rehousing versus permanent?
Yeah,
Or-
sure thing. So rapid rehousing is a voucher which will help somebody, they get their own lease. Please correct me if I get, you want to do it?
Subsidy, yeah.
It's a subsidy, okay.
Yeah, so the three types of permanent housing are transitional housing, well, I shouldn't say permanent. So there's three types of exit destinations that aren't shelter: transitional housing, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing. Transitional housing is exactly that. It's transitional. So the apartments that LiveSafe has, for example, or the extensions services are considered transitional beds because those are a transition period from unsheltered to something else, hopefully, but solving for something big like domestic violence or substance abuse. Rapid rehousing is a type of HUD-funded project that requires a family to have a lease in their own name to receive a subsidy towards their rent by a service provider. So Must Ministries and the Center for Family Resources and LiveSafe all have rapid rehousing programs that are funded by HUD, and we follow their direction on how to administer those programs. The family has to be leased up in their own name, and then they can receive subsidized payments from the provider along with supportive services while they're enrolled in that program. Permanent supportive housing is more permanent. It is for people who have significant disabilities or mental health issues. In our community in particular, those are the two types that we have. Must has a veterans program, and then Highland Rivers does the program for folks with mental health. Those are leased by the provider, so those are units that they pay for over the year with the funds for those projects, and then they slot people in as they are eligible. But people can stay in those for a longer period of time because their conditions are usually disabling. So there's not a lot of movement in transition or permanent supportive housing. So those are the three.
But there is a restriction on time, like 30 days for the rapid rehousing?
Rapid rehousing is dependent on the program and the population that you're serving. So our program has a dollar amount cap. So they have a certain dollar amount for rent that we will pay for, and it is commensurate with their income. So ideally, as their income goes up, our support decreases. So our goal is to get them off of that program. They can be in our program for up to a year, receiving supportive services and case management, but the rent is tied to a specific dollar amount. So rapid is usually 6 months to 12 months.
Thank you.
Thanks for that clarifying question. Any other questions from commissioners? Yes, this may be addressed in future slides, but can you tell us what dictates the amount of dollars that goes towards each of these buckets? Are they driven by a formula through HUD? Are they driven by policy decision-making of the board?
It's HUD largely. So the dollar amounts that we're working with currently are project dollars that are coming from the HUD grant that we write and that these different agencies receive money from. When we are doing our application, each agency for each project has to submit a budget that shows how many people they plan on serving, what the cost estimates are for each of those buckets, and then they're either approved or not, and we can move money around within certain parameters. So there's an administrative bucket, there's a supportive services bucket, and then there's the rent and utilities like basic livings. I can move rent money to utility money or utility money to rent money, but I can't move rent money to admin or to supportive services, and I can't move supportive services money to rent money, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But it's predetermined in our application to HUD. The applications are done in the fall and are for the following year. We're supposed to be on a renewal, so we got approved for this year's funds at about $3 million. And it's supposed to be renewal because they had just approved for us to be on a 2-year cycle. We're waiting to see if that changes, but the contracts for this year are in effect right now.
Okay, so this is request-driven, based off of what the application is
Sort of,
seeking?
similar to the CDBG dollars, and Kimberly's about to come up and talk about that. We are told what we can apply for. So we're given, it's usually not more than what we've already had in the past, and
Okay.
every now and then they will give us a % increase based on availability or what's in the budget. We can apply for new projects and programs if we have something in place that qualifies, and if the board deems it beneficial and necessary. It's not always approved. So there were domestic violence dollars that were available this last year that were applied for and not received in Cobb.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, that's the data portion from what we've done so far. These are the percentage of exits to permanent destinations. This is the modeling that we would like to see. So we would be going from that lower 10 to 20% up to 50 to 55% of people being able to receive services and exit to permanent destinations. Really?
Good afternoon. I'm Kimberly Roberts. Nice to see you, Chairwoman and Commissioners. I'm the Managing Director for the Cobb County CDBG Program Office, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some other kinds of HUD funding that the county receives. And this is the Community Development Block Grant, the Home Investment Partnership Grant, and Emergency Solutions Grant programs. These are annual allocations provided to the county through HUD after the submission of an annual action plan or a 5-year consolidated plan. And we'll talk about the CDBG program first. So this is the county's most flexible grant program and the largest that is provided to the county from HUD. And it's varying on what kind of community development and economic development activities that can be addressed through the grant program. The grants that I'm going to talk to you about today is not necessarily all dedicated to the unhoused. There are some organizations that are funded and that address that issue, but majority of the funding is not dedicated to the unhoused population, just kind of give you a point of reference. So with CDBG, it is set aside for development of communities and economic opportunities, and some of the eligible activities fall under public service activities, which are those direct investments to the local nonprofit organizations. They can be providing job care assistance, child care, health care assistance, but all of this funding is geared toward those individuals who are low and moderately income. Other activities under the CDBG program is public facility improvements, ADA renovations for public facilities, acquiring facilities for nonprofit organizations, or economic development activities, such as like a facade program for a county that's located in a low and moderate income area. And also housing activities, like those housing rehab activities, is also eligible under CDBG. The Home Investment Partnerships Program, this is a grant program that is geared toward providing affordable housing, and most of the time it's permanent affordable housing. So the individuals that are assisted through this grant program also have to be low and moderate income. And there are only 4 eligible activities under this grant program: homeowner rehab, home buyer activities, which includes that down payment assistance or new construction, rental housing activities, which is that assistance to build multifamily communities, tenant-based rental assistance, and that's something that Melanie mentioned. That is assistance to the tenants for up to 24 months to provide utility assistance and rental assistance. While it is a great portion of this grant program, it doesn't go far, the funding, because of the amount of the funding. And there are requirements for under the home program in which the county has to set aside at least 15% of those home funds to, we call them community housing development organizations, CHODOs, to build and construct new housing.
Excuse me, Kimberly,
Yes.
how many CHODOs do we have here in the county?
It's just one CHODO.
Which is?
And it's Cold Street Development Corporation, which is a spinoff from the Marietta Housing
Okay.
Authority.
Thank you.
Just, Chair, if I may ask, can you provide a scale for low to income I'm sorry, low to moderate income?
And actually, it is similar to the HUD
last-
income limits,
okay.
yes, that you've seen. Those are those same limits. And they
Okay.
are increased annually and produced annually by HUD. We just received the ones for 2025, and so it's very similar, except the median family income for this year is $115,000 per family. The Emergency Solutions Grant is a grant that is set aside for helping those who are experiencing a housing crisis and/or homelessness. So there are 5 eligible components that are approved under the grant program: emergency outreach, emergency shelter, street outreach, homeless prevention, rapid rehousing assistance, and the homeless management information system, which is the data reporting system that all grantees have to comply with. So this slide has the 2024 numbers, but 2 weeks ago, we just received the 2025 numbers, and they're very similar. So it's mostly level funding. In 2024, the county received $3.4 million in CDBG, and in 2025, the county is getting $3.4 million, $420 million in CDBG. 2024, $1.2 million a home. We're still getting $1.2 million a home in 2025. And $269,000 in ESG funding. This year, the county is receiving $278,000. So fairly level funding from 24 to 25.
Again, I'm going to ask the same question. So are we getting about 70% in the aggregate, or are you talking about 70% in each of the buckets?
So what we do is we allocate at least 70%, because before May 14th, we didn't know how much the county was going to receive. But in order to stay on time with the timelines and meet the requirements of submitting the annual action plan, we accept applications a year in advance. And then we plan a year in advance based off of 70%, assuming that the county would get at least 70% of what they got in the prior year.
For HUD, 70% of HUD, meaning
This-
you can
these
change the
amounts.
percentages?
Yeah, these-
Or 70% for each CDBG, each home and ESG?
Yes, 70% per grant.
Per
So we
grant.
estimate.
Okay. All right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we kind of pre-planned that the
Okay.
county would at least get 70% of the CDBG allocation, 70% of the home, or 70% of the ESG. And that's how we allocate funding, preliminary funding, then we come back to the
Okay.
board
Okay.
when the funding is released. So this is our 70% estimates before we knew the final allocations for 2025. We used 2024 estimates, and this is posted on our website. And we have funding priorities too. So 15% of the CDBG grant is set aside mandatory by HUD for direct services, those public services. The county cannot go over that 15%. So that's the funding that the nonprofits utilize to provide those services to the unhoused population or those low-income persons who are in the county. Other activities include public facility activities, minor home repair program, planning administration, and then all the municipalities except for Mableton this year will receive a portion of the county's CDBG grant. The ESG program is set aside. There is a 60% cap on emergency shelter and street outreach funding as mandated by HUD. And so we try to never go over that allocation amount for emergency shelter activities and street outreach activities. You'll see that that's a set aside amount. Homeless prevention activities, rapid rehousing, and then there's a 7.5 planning administration cap for the grant program. And then the home program, you'll see the CHOTO set aside at 20%, which is 15% for the CHOTO operating to build and construct new housing, 5% for that CHOTO operating for them to have the salary, supportive services for their salary. And then you'll see home ownership activities, rental housing activities, tenant-based rental assistance, and then planning administration at 10%. So this is how the funding is allocated. So I wanted to provide also some outcomes from the 2024 program year. And there were about 5,800 residents that received assistance through the CDBG program. The county expended a total of $3.1 million. 1.7 million in public facilities, 500,000 in public services, 580,000 in grant planning administration, 2,000 in program income, expended in program income, and then 274,000 in the minor home repair program for Cobb and Smyrna. And under the home program, 278 families were provided with tenant-based rental assistance. And the month of assistance varies by the organization. 2.4 million in home funds were expended. 8 new affordable housing single-family homes were constructed. 7 low-income home buyers were serviced with down payment assistance, and 2 homes were acquired for affordable rental housing. And under the ESG program, 4,800 residents were assisted with ESG funds. $187,000 were expended. 4,000, a little over 4,000 assisted with emergency shelter services, 336 persons with street outreach, and 126 with homeless prevention. And a full recap is available on the county's website in the Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report. That's the CAPER that is submitted to HUD annually, outlining the county's performances. So part of our planning also included a 2024 strategic assessment, needs assessment for the county for the Community Services Block Grant Program. And some of the needs that were generated from the assessment included employment and education needs, income inequality, substance abuse, domestic violence and unsafe living conditions, homelessness, housing insecurity, and mental health issues. And the full plan is also on the county's website. So on top of the needs assessment done in 2024, this year, our office also conducted a housing and community development needs assessment. And we had about 222 responses to our survey. And this was just gearing up the residents and anyone who saw the survey to assess what they deemed as the most important needs for them. And based on their survey results, you'll see that 54% of the respondents reported that their housing was affordable, 33% said their housing was unaffordable, and 12 noted that it was extremely unaffordable. So the question was, if you're not satisfied with your living condition, what are the reasons for your dissatisfaction? 79 said they were too expensive, and 62 said poor transportation. Everyone did not complete every question on the survey. So please rank the following economic and community development needs in the county on a scale ranging from high to low. And 87 said redevelopment and rehab of housing. 73, financial assistance to community organizations. 62 said poor transportation. 73 said increased enforcement. 55 said historic preservation. And 53 individuals said financial assistance to job creation. So in ranking the housing needs in the county, the highest need was 216 residents said new construction of housing and rental units. 215 said rehab of current housing. 213 individuals said down payment assistance is a high need, and 212 said energy efficiency improvements.
Looking back at your slide, that's giving us percentage of the respondents in each category, but you're giving us total number of
Yeah, that's the number of
responses.
individuals that
Okay.
said that was their need.
Okay.
All right, the next question said, following a homeless need in the county, rank the following homeless needs in the county from low to high. And 216 said needed more programs to prevent homelessness. 215 said accessibility to homeless shelters. 214 said transitional and supportive housing programs, and you need more of those types of programs in the county. So as a result of the needs that were generated from the survey, we identified some funding priorities for accepting grant applications. While we have accepted 2026 grant applications a year in advance of the funding coming, we are recommending the allocation percentages on the chart in here. just to make sure that we are addressing some of the needs that have been generated. Now, I will say that organizations have to apply for the grant funding in order for the program to exist. And so while the county can set aside funding, organizations have to have a program to serve individuals, and they have to meet the requirements of the grant program, the federal program. Any questions? And I'll go back.
I'll start with Commissioner Gamble and just go down the dais.
So I'm kind of scrambling with the survey results. How were the recipients of the survey to answer selected? Did we just,
Oh, it's through SurveyMonkey Apply, and so they provided a QR code and a link, and they completed at will. We did
so who was able to find this QR code to scan it to do the survey?
It's on our website. We did flyers in the newspaper. It's on our contact list. We did email blasts. So we advertised it.
Okay, because I was kind of confused at some of the results. So that's why I wasn't sure.
And that's just a snippet. That's not the full survey. So the survey is about 38 questions, but I pulled out some of the important questions.
So are we able to see the full
Oh,
report?
yes. Yeah, I can email that to you, to the
Okay.
board.
And then I'm guessing we have demographics that go with the respondents?
We didn't ask names, but we did ask zip codes. We did ask what's your household income, basic demographics.
So were they all Cobb County
Yes, yes.
respondents? Okay, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Allen, thank you. You're good? Commissioner Burrow, you have any questions?
Well,
Commissioner
just a
Shelton?
follow-up regarding the survey, the total responses, and I know that this is a snippet of 326, but do you recall what the total number of responses were?
The survey closed in April, so I think it was around 300. The total, when we finally looked at it, I think it was about 300 that actually completed the survey. I could send you the survey with the total number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Are we making any significant changes from this year to last year with the allocations?
Yes, so we've never done this before, but we're putting those priorities in the grant application. And so those organizations that are applying, we're trying to gear their applications toward the priorities of the county, so that way they already know this is what the county is intending to fund, rather than going the opposite way, because typically we just let them apply and then allocate. So we're trying to do it, based on the needs and allocate the funding to the needs on that side.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Thank you.
Filming.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman, Commissioners, County Manager. Thanks for giving me a few minutes to speak about our partnership with the law enforcement agencies in the county. Several months ago, as you see on the screen, there's 4 major departments that are dealing with the homeless issues in the field right now. I just want to thank Chief Beam, Chief Zagant, and Sheriff for partnering with us and making our job a little bit easier, because as we know, this issue crosses all of our boundaries, all of our jurisdiction. So what we've been trying to do is work together to try to get them and the unhoused their resources that they need, and then, of course, enforce the laws, the ordinances as we move forward. So our main mission, our strategy is to make sure that all the resources that you've heard about for the last 15, 20 minutes, they get those. Because not everybody needs to go to jail. We understand that there are people that are having they're down on their luck, or they don't have any money, whatever it is, that's not the law enforcement that we need to, we don't have to enforce the law on that. We want to make sure that they are educated on what they need to know, what they can get, and we provide those resources. When we go out to homeless camps, we actually bring flyers, we bring phone numbers, we bring people to help them get out of the bad luck that they're having. Unfortunately, what we deal with are the unhoused that want to remain unhoused, whether they're mentally ill, they have an addiction, they have some issue, whether it's with the government or whoever, and they don't want help. So what we end up doing is keep going back out to these locations, and most of them are in the Bells Ferry corridor. That seems to be the pinnacle of most of the unhoused. So we need to figure out how we are going to combat that. So Marietta actually took lead, and they started, they created a new ordinance, and we'll go over that in a couple of the slides moving forward. So our mission is to help the unhoused that want to be helped or can be helped, and of course enforce existing laws, ordinances, and what we don't have on the books that we're going to try to create with your support to help us get on some of the private properties, some of these places that have terrible, terrible living conditions that's unsafe for the citizens and the unhoused. So these are some of the things that we see on a daily basis. Illegal camping, which, you know, in general, it doesn't sound like it's that bad of an issue, but it's not their property. It's usually on property that belongs to state DOT, the federal DOT areas, county property, and we have good partnerships to clean some of these places up, or at least go out there and navigate. But the problem is some of it's private property, and although they don't have a right to be on that private property, we don't either if we don't know who owns the property. And some of the ordinances will also help us go onto the property and enforce some of the county laws. So we know we have illegal camping, trash, as you know, we threw some pictures in there in case you've never been to the Bells Ferry corridor, the area 75 near the Home Depot in Roberts Court. That was one of the biggest projects we had to deal with because it cost approximately $100,000 of private dollars to clean that area up. Now, we didn't pay that, but putting that new bridge across the through 75, it was all forest area. And then once they started clearing it all out, they found this enormous camp, and the camp was filled with trash, feces, anything you can possibly imagine. So the cost for cleaning up these areas, because they don't have restrooms, it becomes a biohazard area. So, yes, sir.
Who paid for that cleanup?
I believe it was Home Depot, sir,
Home Depot.
because I believe they were the ones that developed that property.
Thank you.
And then you have, in those areas, you're going to have thefts. You're going to have loitering, people just sitting around because they're not going to work, they're not going to school. And those are some of the biggest complaints that we get as law enforcement. People hanging out, they're sleeping on the sidewalks, or they're sleeping in somebody's backyards, the front yards, things like that. So the impact on the community. The impact, of course, and the people that are affected on a daily basis are property owners. Our property owners, they don't know what to do. So if we catch somebody on your front yard and they don't belong there, that's easy. We come there, we tell them to move on. They move on, great. If not, then we take them into custody. But sometimes they're gone before we get there. Sometimes we can't find them. Sometimes they're doing a lewd act where the damage is already done. And then we do an investigation on the backside, which is great, but it doesn't help the school bus of children that just saw an act that they shouldn't see. Some of these stories that we have heard from community meetings are heartbreaking, and that's what we're trying to avoid moving forward. So here's some of the Bells Ferry Road encampments. Most of these have all been cleaned up already. I can't tell you exactly who all cleaned that up. I know some of it was state DOT, some of it was county DOT. If I am correct, the property on state DOT that they shared was about $30,000 because they can't just send a bulldozer in there, clean it all up, but they have to dispose of it properly. So this is how we want to break down what we're going to do with the unhoused that are seeking assistance. We know who to call. We want them to know who to call, how to fix them. Sergeant Brian Skur, who is our task force leader, he calls everybody who has spoken so far numerous times a week to try to get the folks that need help. He does a fantastic job doing that. But the not seeking assistance, like I said earlier, are the individuals that we need to deal with. And whether or not we find them some sort of mental health, or we take them to jail, or we write them enough citations that they don't want to stay in Cobb County anymore. Obviously, we would prefer not to do the last thing, but if the first two things don't work, we really don't have a choice. I know it's been said before, our veteran percentage is low. That's good because they do have a very robust homeless program, but there are one or two out there, but they're also some of the ones that don't want help. So, okay, and then we'll leave Shady Grove alone for now. So this is the new Marietta ordinance that Chief Beam and his staff put together. And I don't want to read it to you verbatim, but the important part is they can't lie upon private property without the owner's or leaseholder's permission. So they can't just jump a fence, pop a tent, and stay there without written permission or permission from the homeowners. Some of the property up in that Bells Ferry area, down in South Cobb and Smyrna, sometimes that property, it's confused, or it's confusing of who actually owns it, and it could take us weeks or months to figure out who it is, and they can start a whole city of homeless people in tents because we can't go on private property yet and just tell them to remove it. So,
Excuse me.
yes, ma'am.
Is this requiring some proof of written documentation, or is this something that can be substantiated through some other means?
I don't want to, Marietta's ordinance, I believe they just have to be able to prove that they have permission. I believe they can do that with a phone call or written permission. Is that true? Yeah.
Sorry, you're going to have to speak on the
Yeah.
microphone.
Sorry, David, I tried to leave you out of it.
Yes, ma'am. We have we've had in the past a criminal trespass form where we warn people not to be on property. We have basically revised that form to include you cannot be on private property, camping, et cetera. And we put a copy of this ordinance on that form, and we use that to warn people. However, we also seek the property owner and have them sign that form for us. That gives us permission to enforce criminal trespass on their property, as well as this ordinance. And we've actually created a map of parcels in the city where we had issues to show which parcels we have a signed form from the ownership of that parcel for.
Okay.
And of course, we're going to run into issues where we have a corporate owner that might be in New York City or Las Vegas or somewhere, and we have to keep reaching out to them. And if they don't give us the form, at some point, we may be coming back to them with a code enforcement issue because of the condition of their property. So that's what we do. We do require our officers to ensure that the property owner has stated on our document that they do not allow people to camp there.
Okay. Thank you.
So moving past Marietta's, and some of the things they revised in the ordinances for building fires and camping in public places. They added on to the disorderly conduct ordinance. And what we want to do moving forward before the end of June is edit some of our, create a couple of new ordinances, prohibited use of private property and building fires and camping in public places. So we mirror Marietta's, because that's where so many of the issues we're having. What some of the individuals will do is they'll go across Bells Ferry Road near Williams Drive, and that's the county. And then they'll get run off from the county and they'll go over to Marietta, or vice versa. So if we mirror the ordinances, then they really don't have a place to go. Although we think that they don't know what the jurisdictions are, they do. They know who's Marietta and who's Cobb, and we just want to have a unified front. In our disorderly conduct 86-2, we'd like to edit that to make sure that everyone has permission, just like Marietta's ordinance says. So if requested by the owner, lawful occupier, leasing tenant, they got to have permission to be there, and if they don't, and we have a very similar form as well for criminal trespass. We catch somebody on private property, the owner doesn't want them there, we do a report, and they sign the piece of paper. But it's a slow process, but that's what we want to do moving forward with law enforcement. And I already kind of started off with our partners, but we've been working very well, like we do in all the law enforcement agencies. For everything else in the county, we're very blessed to have a good partnership. We're all a phone call away to help each other, whether it's a new concept or to beef up some of our manpower or strategies. The enhancement opportunities, we're using ESRI, which is a computer software to help track where some of the unhoused are. That way we know where to send our resources. I've already mentioned several times the Bells Ferry Road area, but South Cobb Drive in the city of Smyrna, that's another hot spot. And what we're doing is we're getting all of the agencies on ESRI so we can all share the information. That way if we start seeing some of the unhoused move, let's say we're having really good luck in the Bells Ferry Road area, and then they all move down to the South Cobb area, we'll already have them identified, and we'll see almost the migration pattern of, oh, they think it's too hot up here. We're going to move to a different section of the county. And that way you don't have to rely on our RMS system or Marietta's or Smyrna's. We've already got all the information and tracking data that we need. So of course we want the other cities in the county to adopt some of our ordinances that we hope to pass so everybody is on the same sheet of music. We want to be able to enforce what happens in the city of Marietta, and a Cobb County police officer goes out on that. We want to have an MOU that gives us permission to write that city ordinance, or if they go from the city across the street, that they can enforce it. We may not have somebody available, but at least the Marietta police officer across the street can enforce that particular ordinance. And the monthly and bi-monthly details, now that we're in the summertime, we are doing those already. So that's something that we go out there, we're tracking the unhoused, we're providing resources and making sure that nobody's breaking the law. Because what I didn't mention earlier, and I got this information from the sheriff's office, you have individuals on the sexual assault registry, and they're homeless, and they don't have an address. And sometimes they have to meet, and the sheriff's office personnel has to try to meet them somewhere, but they're not trackable. And they can be near schools, they can be near our churches, and those are just some of the issues that I know they won't be able to stay on private property. They're still hiding out in the woods, which is just one more reason why we need to get a better control of where they can stay. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you. And just to address some policy concern with that last issue, not necessarily our concern, is that persons who are on that registry cannot live within a certain amount of feet of certain locations, which makes it very difficult for them to
Yes,
find
ma'am, it does.
housing.
Right.
So unfortunately, their options are quite limited.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you for your
Yeah.
presentation.
Thank you.
Right, I'm gonna try to wrap up quickly. So things that we have put together for next steps and things to consider is aligning our impact. So how, we have a growing number of homeless sites, and both in our unsheltered and our families that are experiencing homelessness, largely due to some affordability challenges. And so all of our current efforts are kind of siloed across different agencies. To be clear, like Kimberly Roberts manages CDBG funds that are coming from HUD, but they are segmented and siloed in a very different way than what we do for the continuum of care. Those agencies might overlap, but there's not a stated shared goal currently on what we're trying to do. So what is our goal? What is our long-term reach? What are we trying to solve for? And what do we want that impact to look like? And how do we want to incentivize agencies or providers, and how do we want to hold them accountable for outcomes and measurement. So we're looking for an opportunity to establish clear, measurable goals, coordinate funding streams towards shared outcomes, and leverage all of those different funding streams that come into the county for these services. We want to invest in coordinated and goal-driven approaches, adopting a countywide goal to reduce homelessness with benchmarks, directing future county funding toward partners projects that are aligned with the shared goal, have an established homelessness coordination framework, which we do in some capacity. We have the starts of it through the continuum of care with the coordinated entry process, and we're redesigning a lot of that to try to be more inclusive. But we want to have a structure that's shared decision-making with BOC representation, and then prioritize our funding and the process aligned with system gaps, the things that we know that aren't getting funded by one area or are getting largely funded by another, what's working, what's not working, and how do we move towards investing in things that actually help the problem. Identifying those gaps and investing strategically in them. Obviously, we talked about emergency housing and transitional housing, what that looks like, but we need to have somewhere for those folks to go post-emergency. And so how do we look at long-term sustainability for those? A shared goal of coordinated funding will mean more families and individuals will go from crisis to stability. We'll have fewer children experiencing homelessness in our school systems, which I know the schools would welcome. Our county resources would yield greater impact because we would be aligned in our outcomes and what we're trying to accomplish. And we would be a regional leader in addressing housing insecurity through smart investments and through shared collaboration. So we would like to sort of continue this in a different format and form the Homeless Action Subcommittee, having strategic planning sessions with our key stakeholders to define those shared goals with input from the Board of Commissioners and any stakeholders that we need at the table, and allocate those capacity building dollars in future budgets to align with what we know works. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you. That was quite a robust presentation, a lot of information for us to absorb. And while those action items are outstanding, a lot of action has been taken by a number of partners over several years, and certainly in the most recent months, to address this comprehensive challenge, this layered challenge in our county. So I want to say thank you to those who have been involved. Thank you to our county manager and to all of our partners who are in this room. I don't know if any commissioners have any remarks following that presentation, but I think one of the steps I would recommend is a discussion with each of the commissioners one-on-one, because this is a lot of information to absorb in a short amount of time. But I think there's probably some questions that can be asked around these suggested next steps that I would just strongly encourage someone from your team or the Homeless Alliance to direct to each of the commissioners is my initial thought. But again, I'll go down the dais and see if there are any other thoughts before we conclude this presentation. And again, I'll start with Commissioner Gamble to my right. Are you comfortable with having a conversation outside of here to address some of these action items? Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner?
Yeah, I just have one question. Are you tracking the people who have exited to permanent destination that also come back into the system at a later time?
Our recidivism rate has increased a little bit. It used to sit right around 4 or 5%. It's upticked to, I believe, 7.5% in the last couple of years. But we do track that, and we actually fare lower than the state average, and actually we're lower than all of the other continuum of cares in Georgia.
Okay, thank you.
And you're amenable to follow up?
Yeah, I look forward to that conversation.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Burrow?
Well, I've been on the task force since its inception. And actually, my district covered a lot of the Bells Ferry 41 area where the majority of homelessness resides. And we have been working with that issue for many years with police and MUST and CFR. So we do have a challenge in front of us to fix this problem. And it's not going to happen overnight, as we all know. But we also have a challenge with not just permanent housing and shelter for homeless, unhoused, but also with, the inflation and the market of housing, costs rising, and just everything that we're forced with today with seniors on a fixed income or low-income families that are struggling to make ends meet, but also the housing period, not just for the unhoused, but for, our whole population. So I'm amenable to another commissioner sitting in on or joining or rotating like we do for other committees, audit committee and stuff, if that's, or the one-on-one. And so, and thanks for your presentation. You all did a great job with a lot of information.
Yeah, it is a lot. Thank you for serving. And the Homeless Alliance does incorporate Marietta Housing Authority and several other entities that sit on the board and help us with what we do. And the Cobb Homeless Alliance is also the designated entity that signs MOUs and partnerships for LIHTC properties that are being built now and receiving tax credit issues, so that we can incorporate that into how we respond to the families that are homeless or in need of services and wraparound support. So that's part of it as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. I didn't thank you for serving on the committee, but thank you for your time and effort as well.
Yeah. Thank you,
Now it's
Commissioner.
not my district.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Bells Ferry? No longer?
No,
Oh,
it's District 2.
Hey, Melanie, thank you so much for the presentation. It is a lot, so I look forward to also sitting down with you. There's some great recommendations, but I'm just concerned about how do we move forward with those that do not want to accept the help. I just don't know.
Individuals that don't want to accept it.
Yeah, that just want to remain in that situation, but I guess maybe that require conversation on the county level, but.
So that's some of the work we're doing with law enforcement, is sort of how do we enforce the law, ensure that people are safe in the community, but also not just displace people and continue to kick them into other people's neighborhoods or districts.
Right.
So it is a challenge. It's something that I don't think anyone has solved, because I think you see this across the board as people see increasing homelessness. They do tend to just sort of shift when they are the ones who don't want services. The other part of that is that there are certain services we don't even have. We have very limited services for mental health and very limited services for addiction. And very, very few outreach type programs that are designed to actually meet people where they are and get to know those people more in depth to get them to the right type of service. Not always will a law enforcement officer be able to do that in their 15, 20, 30 minutes that they have with that person. So there are strategic investments that can be made to try to help that population as well. We've just got to do it calculated and decide kind of where our biggest bang for our buck is with the limited resources we have right now.
Okay. And do we know how this is handled in neighboring jurisdictions or municipalities?
Yeah, so luckily I do have contacts with our other COCs. There are 8 others in the state, and the rest is managed by Balance of State, which is Department of Community Affairs. So I talk regularly with Catherine Bassel from Partners for Home in Atlanta, and Jennifer Dulong in Savannah. The others are a little smaller, but DeKalb has a COC as well. And so we actually are in the process of creating a coordinated shared meeting to have quarterly updates where we do, or biannually at least, to discuss the challenges that we each have and how different jurisdictions are addressing it, so that we can share best practices and be more coordinated statewide.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And I'll ask, I know Commissioner Burrow, you already serve on the team, but you're amenable to follow up with the Housing Alliance on this. Okay, great, thank you. Commissioner Allen? Yeah.
Sorry, sorry, one more. I noticed you mentioned it in the next steps about the unhoused population in our schools. in the next steps, and as you do this with additional stakeholders, I'm hopeful that we would include Marietta and Cobb County schools, especially considering the interest they have in housing.
Yep,
To
absolutely.
be part of the conversation.
Yes,
So-
absolutely. And they are both represented on the board for the Cobb Home Alliance as well.
And do we have like specific numbers of how many students are unhoused? I know we have a lot of slides with families with children, but do we know that? Does that
Yeah.
include, when you say with children, you're assuming that they're in school?
So the
There's a
the
separate
school
slide
gave
for
it to us in their slide, and so
Okay.
their numbers were the whole,
It was near the beginning.
there it is.
Okay. there-
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's the percentage of that 2022 and percentage of the 535, but that is specific to just the number of children. So that
Okay.
doesn't tell me necessarily that 2,000 represents 1,000 families. That I don't know exactly. I can get that. We have a shared data agreement with both school systems to have that data. But
Okay.
that's the breakdown.
Okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts from commissioners? Again, thank you so much for the presentation. I think it was a lot of data for us to go back and reassess and to see how we can move the needle forward in addressing, again, this very complex issue in our county. You know, I think we're in a unique position because Cobb is a very affluent county, and sometimes when you have affluence, you don't have the proportionate amount of resources to help when people need help, which creates great disparity. But it's good to know that we have partners who are looking at this and that can at least help us start from someplace. We don't have to start from ground zero, and having not only the numbers in front of us, but having a lot of great partners who are already doing the work in addressing this issue. So thank you so much. With that, we'll go ahead and take a about 10-minute break before we have our next presentation. We'll see you back here at about 3:11. Thank you.
Is this online? Well, Ross, yeah.
Hey, you can, I'm gonna be quick.
Unless I need to go back.
Yep, so that's,
Okay, you're gonna stop on my page that I'm gonna start.
I'll go to your page. You guys just bring your stuff up.
Good afternoon, and welcome back to our Cobb County work session this May 27th, 2025. We have our second presentation before us, which is to receive information regarding the state of garbage and recyclable collection here in the county. I will turn things over to Dr. Gibson, who's our agency director for public services, who will tee up the presentation.
Thank you, Chairwoman. To the Board of Commissioners and Dr. McMorris, County Manager. Thank you for this opportunity. I will definitely be brief. I am introducing Brian. He will come up shortly after me. But I wanted to share a few numbers just from Solid Waste Division of our Sustainability, Waste, and Beautification Department. And those numbers are about the haulers and about the current incorporated, in Cobb, the dwellings that we have in unincorporated Cobb, which you see the number there is approximately about 232,000 dwellings. With that being said, we have 17 currently registered haulers in Cobb County. Last year, we had 18. So just think about that number of dwellings that could possibly produce waste that will have to be collected by somebody. So I'll just share you briefly these 2 points, and this is how, if you are collecting waste in Cobb, these are the steps that you should take if you're not registered. The numbers there that you will call to request a new hauler's package, and those are some of the questions that will be asked of you when you do call for that package. We ask that if you are collecting in Cobb that you should be registered, and I think that's my second repeat on that, so please pay attention to that if you're watching this and you are collecting waste in Cobb and you are not registered as a hauler. The second part is, now that was for new, this is a renewal, so renewal packages go out to current haulers in Cobb mid-November, and they have until the end of January, so like January the 31st, to complete their registration to continue without any penalties. So those packets are sent out from the Solid Waste Division of Sustainability, Waste, and Beautification each year. So the renewal is yearly, and that occurs in November, and then they have until the end of January to complete their registration. So once again, I repeat, we currently have, as of May 21st, when I checked the number, we have 17 registered haulers in Cobb. Okay, any questions for me? If not, I'll introduce Brian Warren, who's our president for our Haulers Association of Cobb County. And we've been working very closely with him since we had a lot of concerns, maybe 2 years ago, and I think we've reduced those. But he will come forward and give us some updates on where they are in the association, as well as some of the new things that they're doing. And there are some additional haulers here present today, and he will introduce them as well. Brian?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Commissioners and County Manager. How are you all doing today? I'll try to be as brief as possible as well. So thank you to Tom for putting this together and helping me out with this. So we are, y'all have seen me before. I'm going to touch on maybe the top 3 things we discussed last year, and then let you know where we are this year in those 3 top topics. In our presentation. So we met earlier this year as a Haulers Association again in February, and they elected me again as the president of the Haulers of Cobb County Association again for another year. So I was happy to do it. I'm always willing to allow anybody else that wants to take the reins and do what the president's job is. And most of the time, they're like, just keep running with it. So that's what we did again this year. We do have 5 different companies representing today, some of the haulers here. So I want to thank all of you guys for coming that are here today. We invited everybody in the association to the meeting, and not everybody could attend. This year, we do have 4 new companies picking up residential garbage in Cobb County that we might not have had last year at this time. So that's a good positive thing. Some have sold out, but we still are plus one or two than we've had in the past. We currently have 10 members. So out of the 17 registered haulers that was mentioned, not all of them are strictly residential haulers. So some of them might be like a 1-800-GOT-JUNK, or they might just be providing commercial services. So, but we do have a very good large percentage of participation in the association of the residential haulers in Cobb County. There may be one or two that aren't part of the association, but they don't have an interest to join. It's almost like the previous presentation where there's some people that don't want help. Some companies don't feel a need to join the association, and we can't make them. So it's just there for whenever, if they would like to join us, great. So here we go. So we did invite everybody. I already mentioned that. I've mentioned this in the past. Originally, we were going to be an independent haulers association, but we decided let's don't do that. Let's just be all inclusive to everybody. One of our haulers now that's a member of our association, which is Waste Connections, is actually the third largest in the country. So it's great to have them as partnered with us in our haulers association and participating in that. So it was a good move to just open it up to anybody who ever wanted to be a member could join. All right, here's the top 3 highlights we discussed last year. Last year at this time, we had 5 complaints that had come into our cobbtrashhelp.com website. So as a refresher, a few years ago, we set up this website in hopes to help all of Cobb County citizens lodge complaints that had accountable actions tied to that. So when we get a complaint, we send it directly to the representative of the company that's on register, and they acknowledge they received the complaint, but they also have to let us know what the resolution was, so that we can register that as well. So we really want to encourage, that they received the complaint and they took care of it. This year, to date, we've only received 1 complaint, and the complaint was minor. It was about a container that hadn't been picked up yet from a customer or resident who canceled service with that company. So we passed that complaint along, and immediately the same day the complaint was resolved. So those are the complaints that have come through the cobbtrashhelp.com website. As far as complaints that you may have received in the county, I know y'all are all wanting to point them to a certain location. I'm not aware of I don't know what the number is there. Number 2, the expanded service options. So one of the problems in the past, as y'all will recall, some residents were saying, I don't have many options for services. So what we have been doing as an association is having that discussion and saying, hey guys, let's open up our areas of service if we can. And so since last year at this time, there are 3 to 4 new companies servicing some of those zip codes where there was only 1 or 2 haulers at one time. And right now, we're currently updating our zip code list on our website. We sent a message out last week, and companies are now looking at the zip codes they're registered as. So we have this chart on the website that has a list of all the companies and then what zip codes they service. So we're updating that right now, and we will see more companies servicing some of those zip codes that were light on options. So that's another good positive from where we were this time last year. Number 3, we met a new manager last year at this time, Rodney Hughley, who's no longer with Waste Connections. And real quick, Waste Connections is the company who purchased American Disposal. And so they've totally rebranded. They don't have anything on any of their business that says anything about American. So they've rebranded. They have a lot of new trucks. They have a new manager now, Dakota Kissick, who's here with us today. He just raised his hand. I had a conversation with him last week, and we talked about some of the struggles in the past. Now, he's been here since the end of July of 2024, so he's still new. But he said their calls are way down. They used to receive about 1,000 calls a day. And this is not 1,000 complaints a day. This is 1,000 calls a day. It could be existing customers with a question about their account. It could be somebody who's transferring service or canceling service or signing up or whatnot. But they're down now to 250 a day, which is a 75% reduction. They haven't had to cancel or had any missed routes in over 7 months, which is great. And they've actually shifted now more to taking on new customers. So they're averaging around 30 or 40 new accounts signing up daily. So those are all signs of a healthy company. And so, in my opinion, the environment right now in the sanitation and recycling for Cobb County, I think it's probably the best it's been in, I'd say, 5 to 8 years. So that's where we're at. We've recently partnered with this building right here that we're in right now. We're running a pilot program for recycling. We found out that there was a need to make sure the maximum amount of goods were being recycled here. And thanks to Dr. McMorris, she tasked me with this. She says, "Can you help me?" And I said, "Absolutely." So now there's recycling being picked up here on a regular basis, right down here on the street. And so that's another positive. With our partnership, that's another positive gain that we've been able to see. So I'm happy to announce that as well. I think that's about it. I think I mentioned these things already that you see on this slide already. I got ahead of myself. Yeah, and that's it. Any questions?
See if commissioners have any comments or questions. Commissioner Burrow?
It's in my blood, I'm sorry. So is that the trashhelp.com website that has the map of where the service locations and all that is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do we still have the email to register, that the citizens can go directly to the website to register?
Yeah, there's a place directly on the website. They click on it, and it's a form they fill out.
Okay.
And
that's at cobbtrashhelp.com?
It's at, yes, ma'am,
Okay.
cobbtrashhelp.com. And we always encourage, again, that we want to make sure also that they've already reached out to their current provider. We don't want to get in the middle of something and solve their problems for them if they haven't even reached out to them yet. But I think that's one of the questions. Have you contacted your provider first? And they answer yes or no.
And the 678-581-5461 number goes to our Keep
I'm
Our
not
Beautiful Sustainability Office?
I'm going to need help with that number. I don't know what that number is.
I don't either.
So yes, that number, excuse me, that number is to the business manager in the Sustainability, Waste, and Beautification Department. And then what she does, she is the one that passes out the new package, the new haulers package.
Okay.
That's where you call to get that.
Okay, in Kimberly White's office?
Kimberly
No.
White, Jonathan
Jonathan
yeah,
Jenkins.
correct.
Okay.
She's a business manager for that, a business coordinator, let me take that back. She's a business coordinator for that department.
Okay. I wasn't familiar with the 678, but that's fine.
Yeah, and her name is Sandra Johnson.
Oh, yeah, she's been here forever.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. The complaints directly to me, and I'm assuming the other commissioners and chair up here, have drastically reduced from a couple years ago when we were fielding a lot daily and mainly with the one hauler that has now been rebranded and
Right.
so thank you. You've done a great job.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yes, I echo that sentiment. Thank you very much. A few years ago, we had packed rooms of people who were not very happy about what was happening with a lot of the hauling service here in the county. And we came together, we had a tough conversation to see what we can do to improve, and today is a testament of that. Seeing the complaint rates go down significantly, to see partnership, a way for complaints to be resolved expeditiously. I think that this is a testament of how hurdles can be a gateway to improvement and to innovation. And this is just a living testament of that. And I'm grateful to be here and to experience that. And I hope that we can view more of our challenges the same way and see how it can bring people together so that we can solve complex challenges and do things better than what we did even before the challenge was presented. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And on behalf of the haulers, we also are grateful to have a voice in that, and to be involved in the conversation. So thank you for that opportunity.
Yes, thank you. Amazing thing happens when we work together, you know.
It's great.
Good. Well, with that, I believe that concludes today's work session. Thank you for joining us. Please come back at 7 p.m. when we have our regular Board of Commissioners meeting. Thank you, and we're adjourned. Thank you.